What's up? It's Mike, and I've been hard at work making a list of all the things I'm thankful for. But I feel like I'm missing something. Oh shit, I forgot about Diddy Kong.
Welcome back to the second annual Talking About Donkey Kong Day, or Thanksgiving for the non-Donkey Kong talkers out there.
Oh, I'm not crazy. I'm the only sane one.
It's been a yearly tradition ever since last year for me to talk about the first video game character ever made. And no, Triangle from Space Wars never counted.
I am Geometry's #1 hater.
Since Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze was the first game I tackled and Nintendo would rather put out DC Superhero Girls Teen Power before a new DKC entry, we're gonna have to go back in time to before the release of Tropical Freeze, the dark ages of 2004.
Ah, a great year. The only bad thing that happened was my birth.
The Donkey Kong Country series had been on hiatus ever since the release of Donkey Kong Country 3, way back in 1996. It had been a really good run-up to that point, with Rare at the helm delivering some of the best playing and looking 2D platforming that the SNES could provide. It seemed like nothing was going to stop the rise of both the series and the studio. That is a weird way to spell nothing. After Rare got thrown into Connect Sports prison, the future of the Donkey Kong Country series looked murky at best, but that was when a new player hopped into the ring. Retro Studios, an American game studio, had just wrapped up development on a little-known game called Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, when the CEO of Retro Studios asked Nintendo if they could work on Donkey Kong instead. Nintendo at the time told them to just make Metroid Prime 3 already. But in 2008, Shigeru Miyamoto himself actually expressed interest in a new Donkey Kong game, quote-unquote, totally by chance.
Even God wanted a new Donkey Kong Country at this rate.
After many heated debates over if they could even top Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, Retro and Nintendo eventually released Donkey Kong Country Returns on Wii on November 21st, 2010 in North America. And it was generally decided that it was better than Donkey Kong Jungle Beat? That's gotta be a felony. Donkey Kong Country Returns starts off with a story.
I don't want to talk about how much money I just lost.
Short story short, Donkey Kong's bananas are stolen and it's up to him and Diddy Kong to get it back. There's really zero substance here, but one thing I can appreciate is how it's all presented. It gave me some serious Mario vs. Donkey Kong vibes, especially when it came to the sound effects and how the bananas disappear, and anything that makes me feel like Mario vs. Donkey Kong is considered good in my book. The good doesn't stop there, far from it, as this is close to being the best 2D platformer on the Wii in general.
I could never betray you.
To start, let's address the elephant in the room. This thing is a Wii remote, or as the cool kids call it, a Wiimote. It was the major selling point of the Wii. Without it, there was a chance that we never got Zumba. The Wiimote is extremely simplistic, catering to the casual demographic that Nintendo was gunning for that generation. Even grandma wasn't safe. It's easy to understand motion controls launched games like Wii Sports and Wii Play into the sales stratosphere, and there were a ton of other games that used the Wiimote in fun and creative ways. Notice something about this list?
Can't seem to find Guilty Party.
Donkey Kong Country Returns was not designed with the Wiimote in mind. There were a lot of mechanics in the game that require you to shake to perform an action, like doing a Smash Bros. Downbeat or blowing, which sure, maybe the motion controls could be considered the best way to do that. Shaking the Wiimote really fast to punch bosses after beating them is cathartic as all get out. But you're telling me that shaking the Wiimote is better than just pressing a button for rolling?
Trust me, it's much more efficient.
The other motion control mechanics, yeah, sure, I can still sleep at night, but tying rolling to motion controls is not the way to go about it. Roll jumping is a critical mechanic to the regular platforming and level progression of Donkey Kong Country Returns, as it extends your jump by a dramatic margin. Do you see the problem with this? To be fair to the game, 98% of the time, I had no issues with it. The rolls came out exactly when I wanted them to. But that 2% of the time I died because the game decided that I didn't shake hard enough were still really frustrating. Is it a deal breaker?
If you want to look funny, not at all.
With all of that said, the non-motion controls are pretty much perfect. The button controls are all hyper-responsive, the jumps are super easy to tune the height of, and the D-pad on the Wiimote is actually way more solid than you would think. I played the entire game with the Wiimote on its side, and while sure that sounds disgusting, it really wasn't that bad. The alternative is playing with a Wiimote and nunchuck, and due to the idea of playing a 2D platformer with a joystick makes me want to nunchuck my breakfast out of my mouth, I didn't use it a whole lot. The Wiimote doesn't just add motion controls, however, it also adds sound. Lots and lots of sound. The Wiimote does have a speaker built into it, and Donkey Kong Country Returns has to be in the running for getting the most mileage out of it. Because the Wiimote makes sounds for every single collectible you get, every single punch you land on the bosses and ending barrels, But even funnier, it plays a sound for every single banana you get. And I mean every single one. Is it necessary at all?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you need to breathe?
Breathing won't help you for very long though, because this game's performance will absolutely take it away. Donkey Kong Country Returns isn't the best looking Wii game out there, but a silky smooth 60 FPS that doesn't budge the entire runtime makes this one of the best feeling games in the entire Wii library. And slap on load times that would make Tropical Freeze blush and you have yourself a rock solid game technically. Speaking of Tropical Freeze, great level design, and Donkey Kong Country Returns has that in spades. The levels themselves are unfortunately not as memorable as the one scene in the Wii U hit, but that's literally the highest bar you can strive for, so they get a pass this time.
But they better get it right the next time.
One level that does come to mind is Gear Getaway, but that's a funny example because I don't remember that specifically from the level design, but from another thing that Donkey Kong Country Returns excels at, the music. Nintendo leaned heavily into big band, jazzy style compositions here, and to me, that's when Nintendo music is at its best. Galaxy obviously being the exception. From all the different remixes of the DK Island Swing to the extremely upbeat Rocket Barrel songs and the more mellowed out, intense minecart melodies, everything fits together wonderfully. Something that interestingly doesn't fit with my expectations was the difficulty. When I was reading up on details from Donkey Kong Country Returns release, I saw a lot of mentions of a brutal difficulty, but in all honesty, it's not that bad at all. You get tons of lives to play with, and the difficulty curve over the whole game is pretty solid, minus a giant spike in the last world. Seriously, I went from beating everything first to second try to dying 8 times a level. It never felt unfair though. Except for this one part in World 8, where I just legitimately couldn't tell if the pillar was a part of the background or if it was in the foreground.
Man, if only the screen I was playing on was much smaller and had stereoscopic 3D, and also the game ran much worse and it was also called Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D. I should buy lottery tickets.
That's right, some Nintendo executive probably died at the same exact point I did and got so pissed that on May 24th, 2013, Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D was released in North America, and contrary to popular belief, Nintendo added more to the release than just a funky 3D effect.
Oh yeah, they added my favorite feature of making it much worse than the original.
The game feels like a tug of war between things that are slightly better than the Wii version and things that are much, much worse than the Wii version. Right off the bat, the game runs at half the frame rate, all the while looking much worse than the original. Now that isn't a deal breaker, but you can practically feel the 3DS groaning under the weight of the game. When it comes to the 3D effect, it's okay. It's one of the 3DS games that I think could really benefit from the 3D being on, but at least to me, the effect can be really overpowering, and it fried my eyes so badly I had to get another pair of glasses. It isn't all negative though, as we can finally roll using a button press.
Yes!
On the other hand, you can only use the circle pad for movement, as the D-pad does absolutely nothing.
No!
Come on, the D-pad is right there. It would have been so easy to add on as an additional control method. But nope, they thought the circle pad was enough. Don't get me wrong, I love me some circle pad action, but it just does not work for this kind of game. One actually positive addition with no downsides is the addition of a new mode, which gives Donkey Kong an extra heart and makes some other changes to the game to make it more welcoming without taking away what makes it fun. There's even a whole extra 9th world that the Wii version didn't have. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D is just too compromised compared to the original to warrant me recommending it. The handheld form factor does work pretty well and services the game, but due to the circle pad being the only control method, the performance not being up to snuff, and the 3D effect burning my vision away, it's simply not worth it. At the end of the day, Donkey Kong Country Returns is a really great game. The performance is spot on, the button controls and overall game feel is fantastic, the level designs are second only to its sequel, the music is bopping, and the difficulty curve is fairly smooth, all combined to make a solid 2D platformer that any fan of the genre can pick up and enjoy. But I can't help that feel that this game will never reach its full potential though. Imagine the Wii game's performance with complete button controls and a great D-pad for movement, while being able to take it with you on the go and play on a TV. What an amazing game that would be.
In the end, I'm still thankful I played both versions of Donkey Kong Country Returns, because at its core, it's a love letter to fans of the old Donkey Kong Country series, and at that, it wholeheartedly succeeds. But it still isn't as good as Donkey Kong Jr. Math.